after watching the film, what are kind of your takeaways from Saturday's game?
Exactly what I said. The other coaches coached better than we did during the week, which allowed them to have free access for a quarter and a half. How did you get in here? Come here. Come on. Come on. Take two here in a second. There's food in here. Come on, girls. Somebody left the back door? Come on. Hey, no. Come on. No. Come on. No. Come on. No food. Come on.
I instantly looked to see if you had put your foot down.
I had already gotten rid of it.
20 minutes. Just what I had said, that they did a better job of preparing during the week, which allowed them to have free access to us for a quarter and a half. And then we did a really good job in the second half, made really good adjustments. Players didn't flinch. Coordinators called good plays in the second half, and we were fortunate to get out of there with a win.
What about your run game? Has anything started to reveal itself from game 1 to game 2? Is it consistently struggling?
They have more people in the box than we can block, so there's an extra player in there, and the laws of football, if there's an extra player that has no responsibility, allows everybody to play heavy this way, which it's hard to block when they're playing heavy this way, and there's an extra guy. The extra guy could be coming from here. There's a heavy player over there. So you have to have the ability to throw more passes down the field like we did in the third quarter.
Saturday, you said Colin might be out for a while. Do you have any updates on him?
Well, nothing more than what they were told me. I mean, it's going to be a while, so very unfortunate. As you know, Justin Wright and Colin both now are in that category that might miss a considerable number of games, and you know, hardest thing for a coach, but there wouldn't be anything to update for at least a month or so.
I realize he's not the same as Colin Oliver, but in a pinch, Obi Ezigbo came out and he played his butt off.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in that category from experience and a lot of things, but what he did was really compete, and he got put to the test with an extended number of plays that he really hadn't had at this level, and so it is different for him, and I was proud of him and shared that with the staff that he actually played better than I thought he would, which can ultimately be the case a lot of times. We don't really know how good a young man can play until he gets in there. And so he's got a lot of work ahead of him, but I'm certainly glad we have him, and he played better than what I thought he would have on such a short notice.
In the same vein as extra effort, I mean, I grew up like a lot of us in the Michael Jordan era and remember what he did in the playoffs when he was feeling like crap in the championship. DeJon Stribling wasn't full speed. He was sick, but he played through it and made some big plays.
He made some plays, yeah. He had a couple balls that we feel like eventually as the season goes on he'll make those catches, but he didn't feel well. You know, it's one of the things about athletics, college football, and daily life. There's times we don't feel good, we got to go to work. And, same thing with him, so I was proud of him for competing.
You talked about Obi a second ago, coming from Gannon. What was it about his, I mean, we've seen some guys come from those lower divisions, but maybe not sort of the, you know, guys playing on the line as much. What was it about him, and just what did you like about what you saw from the Gannon stuff?
Do you want me to go back into coach talk, or do you want me to tell you the truth?
The truth.
The truth?
Yes.
He was very inexpensive. The number of players that we go after that were ready to play at this level, we can't afford. So he was a good buy and a really quality young man that had had success and has physical characteristics that we can work with Rob Glass and develop him. And so that's why he ended up here, in my opinion. So we saw some things that we felt like that we could develop into a good player at this level, and it wasn't going to cost us the money that we didn't have.
I asked you the other night about who steps in behind him. I assume there's an opportunity for a young guy now to come in and spell him from time to time.
We're going to investigate that this week and come up with a plan for where we're at with that particular position. And if we have to vary a style of play to get certain guys on the field with more maturity, we could do that, but we won't know that till Thursday.
So Collins' absence could lead to a little bit of some schematic changes
Could,
possibly?
yes, could.
You talked about last year with Leon. How did he get on your radar? Coming from a D3 school, a smaller school, and you credited Todd Bradford and their staff about looking at every position. Is that even more important in today's NIL and pay for players era of finding those smaller schools, finding those they're not playing on the biggest stage guys?
Do you want coaches talk or the truth?
I always want truth.
He was inexpensive, and he was a hell of a get for this price. So forever, it used to be the old Ford Taurus, you could get it, it's relatively inexpensive, good gas mileage, and you could go coast to coast, and you'd have a really good chance of getting there. The old Honda Accord, okay, I'm more for American-made products, but the point being is that we really liked him, and he wasn't in a position that was, other schools were offering a lot of money. And so we could get our hands on him, and we were really glad. He was a good take for us.
Is him having experience with Brian Narda, with him having experience with Brian, made him more of an attractive candidate?
I don't know that factors in any at all. Obi's an intelligent young man, and he comes from a really solid upbringing, which factors in a lot of moving across the country, settling into this area and getting used to all of us that talk funny, and then realizing that if he'll just do what he's asked to do and work really hard, he'll get better and improve. And so he made those adjustments on his own. The one thing that surprised me was I didn't think that he was prepared, physically conditioned to think well after that many plays. Because what happens is guys get tired and their mind goes and they make mistakes. And he played really well mentally in the fourth quarter and overtime after an extended period of time, which is a pretty good example of why he's able to move across the country and do well here. He's a pretty mature young man.
Through 2 games, are there things with the defense that are consistent issues that you've got to fix, or were they more isolated to the types of things the offenses were doing against
The
you?
majority of the problems we had in the first half was we got outcoached. And then we got our players put in the wrong positions. We have to fix that, which that's on us, and then we have to get our players in the right position based on giving them the best chance. And that's as simple as way I can put it.
I'll start off with I want the truth, which means you may have to say, Robert, you don't know crap. But
You're
when I
like the
look-
guy on A Few Good Men.
When I looked back on it on Sunday, from the sideline, it looked like some of their receivers were just running wide open. But when you go back and look on tape, it wasn't that bad. They guys were in the vicinity, and they made good plays. They had pretty good guys at receiver.
Well, you're a homer is the first part, because they were running wide open. You're wanting to make it look better, and honestly, they were running wide open. Now,
I asked for it.
well, it's all right. We're honest here. I mean, there's no reason anybody should come to these press conferences if we're going to bullshit each other. So the point being is that they were running wide open, and the good news is this, Robert, is it's fixable. And I know everybody's going, didn't look like it's fixable to me. It is fixable, okay? So if players don't have schemes that give them either an equal opportunity or a better opportunity than your opponent, you're exposed. And then if the other guys have schemes that are better than yours, you're really exposed. So there's been a lot of times in my career here that we have had better schemes than the other coaches. I just don't talk about it. But because they had better concepts than we did, and then our players got out of position, it made it look really bad. So the almost 2 wrongs don't make a right. This was not good, this was not good, now the whole thing's not good. And then you add his ability to run the ball. Like they had him listed at 6'5" or 6'6". He looked like he could be a swing forward for the Thunder. I mean, he looked 6'9" to me out there. Maybe it was because of his frame. But last Monday in here, somebody asked me, and I said, one of the concerns we have with him is his ability to get out and run, because it only takes him 2 steps to get across this room. And it's hard to catch guys like that in space. So there was a lot of things that snowballed. That's why we were fortunate to win that game.
The key adjustment in the second half was pressuring him.
1 was pressure, and 2, we made minor adjustments, concept-wise with their running game, which was much better. We still struggled with a G play. They hit us on a few times. We fixed it, and then one time they cut it all the way back in the A gap, which is a good play on their part. We used to run that here with Coach Miles. We ran that G scheme forever. It's a really good football play. And then the guy cut it back. But for the most part, we were sound in the run game on those issues we had in the first half. And then pressures helped us, and we made adjustments in coverages where we had the issues, which got guys in better position, and maybe that's what you saw in the second half. It looked better.
You talked about it a little bit after the game, but y'all had pressure sometimes in the second half, but he was able to get out and still pick up, big play with his legs. Is that, going back and watching the tape, something these guys can learn from when facing a quarterback like that?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is athleticism. It's like, running down, this is a bad example, but you could be back there with Mike Vick, and you have a hard time getting him down. This guy had a really good quick twitch, so you could get close to him and he could move quick, and that's hard. Obi had him twice. We had him 8 times. We didn't get him down. So that was a good thing. From that standpoint, our coaches did a good job. But we got to corral them and get them down, because if you don't get them down, it doesn't matter. Because then if they get out when you pressure them, now you're really exposed because you don't have as many people back there playing pass.
Is there something y'all can do differently in those situations, or?
I mean, it wasn't, they were fine. Here's the thing about pass rushes that's interesting. So defensive line coaches will tell those guys, I want you to fight, scrape, spit, claw, bite, whatever you got to do. I need you to get to that quarterback. But when you get back there, don't get out of control and let him by you. Okay? Or make sure you have some rush lane presence. I want you've got whatever it takes to get back there, you got to get back there. But then don't get out of your lane. So there's a lot going on for those guys. That's why the ones that go to the NFL make so much money, because it's extremely difficult to do that, particularly now with dual threat quarterbacks.
Mike, does your experience kind of help when you expend so much emotional, physical energy in a game to get you ready for the next one?
Me or the players?
Players.
I thought you were actually concerned about me. Because I burned a lot of emotional energy all week now that I didn't used to burn. I think these guys will be fine. And the 6 and 7 year guys you're talking about, they should understand. That's one advantage we have, is they've been here so long, or they've played so long, they know what it takes. Because what my message has always been to them is, college football is unique because it's a 1 week season, and it started yesterday, and then Tulsa ends Saturday after the game, and then whoever we play next starts then, and then it ends after that game. And you have to recondition physically and mentally. You have to hydrate, you have to eat food, you have to sleep, you have to study tape. You have to do the same things and maximize yourself each week. And if you're not mature enough to understand that, then you're going to struggle. And that's what happens across the country in college football. When you see teams that don't play as well as they're supposed to, my experience is they weren't able to get rid of last week and reprogram for this week, or they are young and they get mentally fatigued and they think they are, but they're not doing it, and they don't play as well on Saturdays. That's just me here at Oklahoma State. I don't know about anybody else.
Mike, you talked about the way defenses are loading up the box for the run game. That aside, how do you feel like your offensive line has played?
Well, so that's a good comment, but loading it up is one full man extra. We're getting half. So like a guy that's cheating on pass, and then he's coming in there and we don't have blocker for him. Instead of a guy just standing in there, which is loaded. So we're getting more of the half, and there's 2 ways to handle it. One, as I mentioned earlier, we got to get the ball thrown over those people's head. Or 2, Ollie has to run through him, or Sessi has to run through him. And our offensive line play has been average. Hasn't been bad. We're talking about run blocking, because our pass protection's been excellent. I don't think we've given up a sack this year so far, not that I know of. And our negative yardage plays haven't been bad. So their play in that area, knock on wood, has been really good. The run blocking has been average, and then you add the half person, and not a great combination there.
Flat out, were they more Were they trying to stop the inside zone more than they pinched in?
They had extra guys, they had an extra guy everywhere. They had a good plan. I'm just saying, they had good plans. They're always they're always on that guy over there. I thought they were good coaches. They had good plans, so.
Your thoughts on TU? We've seen a lot of Kevin Wilson, but you can see the influence of Steve Spurrier Jr. in this offense a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of Coach Spurrier's stuff that Junior's has carried with him, and Kevin's philosophy is a little different than that. In the long term, is his history, but there's some influence there from Junior on some of the stuff his dad used to do.
How do you feel about this series at all? 8-year series, home and home with Tulsa.
Well, I feel the same way about it as I did, that it's good for the fans, it's good for the state. We can keep all the money in the state. Stadiums should be full, easy to get to for both groups. I think it's a good thing, just like I think the Arkansas series is a good one. It makes sense, based on what both sides are trying to get accomplished.
Two-game. You go.
Trey Rucker leads the nation in tackles after 2 weeks. So statistically, it obviously looks like he's playing really well, but from the coach's perspective, is that showing through?
Yeah, he's playing good. He's there's a couple times based on the concepts we had in the first half where he got out of his place in coverages, which is not all his fault. But he is playing really well, and he's been reliable, and he's been a physical player for our team.
2 games in, have you kind of seen the impact of having Coach Schneider with y'all, and having a full-time special teams coach?
Yeah, I can see the impact of it. Maybe not as visible to the public at this time, but I see the inside and the integral parts of what we're doing with all 4 units and where we're improving. And I thought the same thing yesterday when I was driving home, the question you asked me. And I see that as developing over the year. And as we get used to this system, it's different than what we've done in the teaching and what our goals are and what we're trying to get accomplished. I see us getting a little bit better each week. We were improved in special teams, even though the public might not be able to notice it.
Returns are really rare. I mean, like big returns, like punt and kickoff returns. Is that? I mean, and that's not just you guys. That's across the board. You just don't see those wow returns anymore. Is that just what's happening in college football? Or
Punters and kickers are better. Kickers are hanging the ball up at 4.2, which is more than what it's been traditionally. They're getting it up there pretty good, and the punters are really good at hanging the ball up there forever, and they're still getting between 38 and 42 yards, so there's not as much time.
Sort of similar to Scott's question about Trey, but with all that went wrong defensively, Nick Martin was seemingly everywhere. How beneficial is it to, whenever things are going wrong, that you have a linebacker that's that good?
Yeah, Nick plays so hard, it's crazy. He set a record on catapult. He was at 857 on a player load in catapult. We've never even had anybody over 800. Most guys that play hard float around 620 to 690. He was 857 on a catapult. So we were going to check his catapult this week to make sure his mouth wasn't malfunctioning. But when I watched him on tape and watched him play, I can see why he was at that number. And when you have a guy like him running around making plays, you're always going to feel good about it because he shows up out of nowhere. And he did it a number of times in the latter part of the fourth quarter and overtime, as well as Kendall. Kendall's stop on 4th down. You guys saw it better than me. I didn't know it. Y'all should have brought it. Somebody brought it up to me in the postgame. Well, see, I didn't see it because I can't see from down there. That was a big-time stop because he only had a 4-yard movement, and the back had a 6-yard movement. And, I mean, he stoned him right there. It was really, really a tribute to him and Rob Glass at that point. But Nick gives us a lot there with just his ability to run around.
Overall with Kendall, did you see an improvement this week?
Yes, Kendall's getting better. Sure is. And he should improve. He'll continue to get better and better.
He made the tackle on 3rd down, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That catapult score, does that measure effort, mileage, speed, what's all?
Everything.
Okay.
Yeah, that thing has like 7 categories. I don't make you think I understand all of it. They just tell me what 3 of them mean. One of them means how many miles you ran during the game. One of them means how fast you ran during the game, and one of them means your player load, which is a combination of a bunch of things and how much it affected your body. And those are an 857 numbers would be like somebody that doesn't work out all of a sudden saying, "Hey, I'm going to go run a marathon." It's a huge number.
It looks like Nick works out too. It looks like Nick works out.
Yeah, Nick's in a little bit better shape than the guys like us that are saying we're just going to go out for a little jog. Genetically, he's in a whole different category.
I know you were focused on your team, your guys, but looking around the Big 12, it feels like the parity that we've trumpeted in this league is alive and well. What are your thoughts on just what you've seen?
I just see some scores, and then, I get home in the afternoon because we had such an early game, so I was able to watch some games. It's really across the country. I think there's, I'm just throwing this number out, there's probably 10 teams that deserve to be way up there that we could play home or away and probably be a 6 to 9 point favorite no matter who they played. And then you can throw the other 40 or 50 in a hat and just shake them up, and it'll make a difference who you get out. And I think you're going to see that across the country with free agency and the NIL and portal.
Do you feel like you are one of those 10 teams that could
What's
play
that?
anywhere? Do you feel like you're one of those 10 teams that could play anywhere?
We're not there yet.
When you look at that parity, Mike, how deep down does it go? Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame. South Alabama came here and whacked you last year. It seems like people are getting hit from
And
new
that's,
places.
yeah, see, like this team we just played, 15 players on their two deep weren't on our team last year. So they had acquired 15 players on their two deep that came from somewhere else. So you really can change your roster now more than ever. And as I've said for 4 or 5 or 6 years, this is going to look like the NFL before long, where there'll be a whole bunch of 6-win teams because of that reason. And new players on teams and how acquainted they are of each other and how can they play, and they don't really know each other. So it's like an NFL, guys trade teams. We do it in basketball in the pros, we do it in baseball in the pros, but it's not a physical contact sport, it's different. This is a much different sport when it comes to that. So I think you're going to see this more and more with teams that, now I watched the second half of Northern Illinois and Notre Dame, and I didn't really see anybody, I didn't see an upset. I saw a team that played really well and stopped them and ran the ball, and it was interesting though. They made a mistake. They didn't restart the clock, or they didn't burn Notre Dame's timeout. Did you guys see that? So they ran the third down. Did anybody see the game? Because I don't want to tell the story. Y'all didn't see the game, so it's not going to do any good.
We were working.
Huh?
We were working.
Yeah, y'all were working.
You are wearing half of the game.
So anyway, at third down and about this much, and they ran the ball. Notre Dame had one timeout left, so they ran the ball to try to get a first down. And they measured it, stopped the clock and measured it, and said it was short. It was an awful spot. And then when that was complete, they should have restarted the clock. They didn't. And Notre Dame had one timeout, so I thought, well, Notre Dame must have told them during the measurement, go ahead and burn our timeout. We don't want to start the clock. You know how they do that. Well, they didn't. They came back. They made the field goal. They didn't start the clock, which would have burned off 40 seconds. And then they kicked off, and Notre Dame still got the timeout. Nobody ever knew it.
Have you heard from either SEC
Now, I could
or
be wrong on that, but that's what I saw in that situation. Am I correct? Yeah, I mean, so how does...
So they even reviewed the spot and came back and said it was the correct spot, and I'm like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting there watching the game, and I said, why is the clock not running, and why are they not calling timeout, and why is nobody saying anything about this? That was huge, big deal.
Have you heard from Big 12 or SEC officials after Saturday's game?
No. I'm going to call the director of the SEC. It's not his fault. It's Steve Shaw's fault. He runs the officials. So he's in charge of all this. He needs to get everybody in one room and say, this is the rules. This is how we're calling it. Okay? If a guy barks out a signal and he's in the line, it's a penalty. If a guy barks out a signal and he's back here, it's not a penalty. It doesn't make a difference to me what they call. I just need consistency. Okay? And what upset me was we've done that multiple times and nobody ever said a word about it. And so those officials, it's not their fault either. It's the guy in charge. That's his fault. It's just like celebrations. So how are we going to call celebrations now? No, don't get me wrong, Bowman should have got flagged. He should have got 2 flags. Okay, but the point being is, what's a celebration in your mind might not be in mine. It's judgmental. And we need to clean that up. There's only one way to clean it up. No celebrations. Because how do we know? I see it differently than you do. But that was an issue. We had the cut block on the touchdown. We threw a touchdown to Brennan, right? And they called it cut block based on the tackle box. So the tackle box is an imaginary spot that we use for blocking, we use for the quarterback to throw the ball away. And once the play's established based on where the outside leg of the tackle is and the outside leg of the tackle is, that tackle box is established. And that never moves. So if there's anything that goes on outside by rule that's illegal, it's a penalty. If there's anything that stays inside, it's not a penalty based on cut blocks, chop blocks, quarterback, all those things. We're getting inconsistencies on that. We shouldn't be.
Because there's another one where I got on this end zone where they threw a flag for dribbling, I guess pick playing, but they waved it off saying it wasn't pass interference, and that was
Which is okay, because in that situation, I saw a receiver catch a ball, I saw an offensive player bump into a defensive player, so I'm not sure. Okay, I'm gonna flag it, and then we're gonna talk about it. Was it behind the line, if it's legal? And I'm gonna talk to him, and we're gonna make a decision and then pick it up. I'm good with that. I actually think that's good officiating, especially if they pick it up for us and it's our favor, okay? But here's the issue I have. I don't have a problem with the SEC officials. I don't have a problem with the Big 12 officials. I got a problem with Steve Shaw, who's in charge. He needs to get him in one room and say, guys, this is what we're calling. Because when I go to play a game and the ACC's officiating, if they make 3 calls that they say, well, this is what we do in the ACC, and it hurts my team, then that's not fair to my team. I need to know what the rules are. I'll play by the rules. I just need to know what they are. As long as I know what the speed limit is, and if I get a ticket and I drove over it, that's my choice. But if I didn't know what the speed limit is, maybe it's not my fault.
Last question for Coach.
And Mike, when we were talking about parity a second ago, you were talking about NIL and the portal and all that. When that kicked off a couple of years ago, I think there was a wide-held belief that like Alabama, Georgia, and whoever was at the top at the time was just gonna hoard talent. And
They
everybody-
are.
But the parity has grown. It hasn't, like the upper echelon, it hasn't separated. Did
Yeah.
you think it would go this way, or did you feel like the hoarding would happen?
Well, there's several ways to look at this. There's a group of teams that are running away with it. So in off-season free agency and the bidding that's going on for players, there's a certain group of them that we don't even get involved in. Because, you know, you call them and they say, hey, look, I get $300,000 just to take an official visit. Okay, well, who's next? So there is a group that is doing that. That's still out there. The challenge, here's what the challenge is going to be. From what I can see in reading between the lines with this judge, what she's talking about, and then I had a conversation last night with somebody, I don't think they're going to sign this player revenue. I think they're a long ways off. So if that happens, then we're in another year of what you call is collective NIL, which is paying players that we're not supposed to be doing. So I think she's going the other way on this revenue sharing, in my opinion. And so what we have to be careful of in that instance is the accumulation of money spent by certain schools over a period of time. Like the ACC is upset because they said, we get this amount of money per team. The SEC and the Big Ten get this amount of money per team. Over a 4-year period, it's this amount of money. So it's just like invested in the stock market. If you invested this amount and the other guy invests this amount, after 8 years, his money goes here and your money goes here. You doubled your money, but he doubled his money. That's a concern. That's what we have to get under control, because if we have a few schools in the country, more than a few, but if we have 20 schools in the country that are extending themselves by $15 or $20 million a year and investing that in a team, where are we going to be 4 years from now? That's a concern.
So the discrepancy hasn't happened yet, but it very well could
It's
go.
heading that direction. My opinion is if she doesn't sign this and we get out of player revenue sharing, that the discrepancies are gonna be that way and you're not gonna have any more parity.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That's news for the day.